if we don't consistently keep getting new generations of customers in front of these dealers to buy these products, then it'll shrivel up and die.
That's been the scariest thing I've seen from power sports dealers in some cases too, is that they like value their older customers more than their newer customers. And lifetime value of a customer is a really important metric that
Mhm.
everybody should follow on, because it says nothing about leaving behind your old customers. It says everything about all of your customers. And if you look at that, you're like, okay, well, these customers are going, what you just said is they're going to fall off and you're going to need to replace new ones. And like, but we don't have a buying experience that fits the newer. We have the older ones. Like,
Hey, everybody. We're back now with a new episode of the Dealership Fixit podcast. My name is Jacob Berry, and today I've got Jory Anderson. Jory's from Revvable. He's the CEO of Revvable, and Revvable is a software system that automates and streamlines the process of filling out lenders, which I really, really want to get into because this has been a thing that I've been chasing for a very long time. With the online customer and getting conversions, and especially that finance application is a huge one. So we brought on Jory today to talk a little bit about the online experience when it comes to finance applications and kind of getting the customers through the F&I funnel, if you will. So welcome, Jory. Nice to have you.
thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk more about this stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get you on the podcast here for a little bit. You've been wanting to talk to us. We've been wanting to talk to you. So glad we can finally connect here and kind of go down the rabbit hole of the online experience for these customers. All right, man. Well, why don't we just kind of start out with, you and a little bit about your background. You were in the automotive industry before this. Just kind of take us through a little bit of your history here, your resume, and give us the speed up to where you're at now.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really in the beginning an automotive fan at heart. I've been racing cars, done, chump car racing with BMWs and all that stuff, and found myself in sales and in service in the automotive side. So when I was in college, I worked for Range Rover as a full-time service advisor, trying to get my classes in at night and doing all that stuff. And then that dealership actually opened up an Audi dealership. And so I was always trying to get into, like, I thought I was, great at sales. I'd love to do that. My mom was always into sales. So I kind of pushed my way into there and became, a brand advisor for Audi, doing sales while I was in college there. And that was what was interesting, is both of those dealerships were a little bit smaller dealerships. And so they always did, for the most part, cradle to grave. So we were always the salesperson and the finance person. And so, well, I don't want to fast forward too much into what Revvable's doing, but back in the day, like, one of the things that made or break you was just the ability to get people through the F&I office. Like, I needed to get back out there because I was missing ups if I was in the finance office, but you can't, you don't want to piss off one of your customers that just committed to buying a $70,000 Audi from you. So there's some PTSD there that I aim to solve with Revvable. And then I also, before Revvable, was working for an automotive performance shop where we were basically trying to build the first ever chain of retail speed shop. So you buy your car, you want it faster. All of that was direct consumer. So it's all about inbound leads and getting our content out there and dealing with people. And it's basically just a big service department, but we do, the fun upgrades. So no maintenance, really, just you want a Whipple, we got you a Whipple. Want some suspension, exhaust. So a little bit more on the automotive side from there. But dealer process is there. And then obviously I live in a town where, PWC is really fun and side by sides are close and all that stuff is, the addiction is there.
Okay, a little bit of a gearhead there throughout your career, working at dealerships and then the speed shop. How long did you do the speed shop?
So I was the vice president of sales and marketing at the speed shop for almost 2 years, or just over 2 years. So that was 20, or yeah, over two, because it was 2019 December, all the way up until I joined Revel, which was April of 2022. So
Okay,
we're
okay, couple
yeah.
years then. All right. And what was the deciding factor on joining Revvable here?
Well, we had at the company I was with, we had built our own ERP, which is an enterprise retail, software essentially. So, most dealerships or power sports dealerships are operating off of the DMS. Well, for, the performance automotive service shops, there wasn't really any technology, and especially not for what we did for, like, our efficiency numbers, like really trying to get into the weeds of how can we help, build a company with software, especially when you're trying to scale to, our goal is 100 locations in 10 years. That company still exists today. They're still doing great, as well. And one of the things I'd wanted to do was I'd always wanted to package that software and sell it to other performance shops, because ultimately, even if we had 100 locations, we were never going to be the only speed shop out there. And these speed shops are similar to power sports, and they're, single owner, like majority mom and pop. people really care about their business, they're passionate about the industry, but they don't always have like the tech background or that stuff. And so they're buying software that's trying to solve a problem for them, typically like paying too much. So Revvable came along and was basically like, hey, we've done research in the power sports industry. Here's kind of our findings there. And I was like, this is our like very similar problems. And I was like, if you're going to go solve those, like I love software and eventually wanted to get back into selling software instead of doing the retail side of a performance speed shop. So I ended up when I got approached by them and taking a look at like just the research they had done and confirming it with my own research and just my experience in the automotive. I was like, this is a great opportunity to help a lot of people. So that's kind of how I
Nice.
ended up in that. Yeah.
Nice. And you just became CEO roughly about 4 months ago?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of a, it's an interesting story. So I got hired as the head of sales, founding head of sales to take the products to market. Revvable's built a couple different products to start off with. And then really I probably started taking over in about June of 2023. And then officially with our funding round, took over as CEO. And our current CEO, our previous CEO, he's chairman of the board. I'm a really smart guy as well, who was a writer at heart, but came from the technology product background. So he ended up, falling in love with the idea as well. And then now he's doing some cool product stuff at another company, which is great as well.
Nice, man. Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So, service advisor, brand specialist, business analyst, sales manager, sales director, VP of sales, and now CEO. You seem like you've done it all there, Jory. And
Yes,
so now that you're sitting at the head of Revvable, kind of directing the company on which solutions to provide for these dealers, the reason I wanted to have you on today is to kind of talk about that online experience that customers have, right?
right.
So just to kind of paint the picture, if we use our full spectrum of the customer's journey online, right? They typically start with some type of influence, commercial, advertisement, maybe social media or otherwise, and they now land on a power sports dealer's website page. Now, typically with the solutions that are out there in terms of website providers, they usually have a stack of buttons. They got a little widget flying across the screen and all sorts of blinking things, as well as some really good merchandised inventory from all the major brands, right? So I've always felt that in terms of the priority of leads that come along, to get a quote is a huge one. A trade-in value is another huge one. But the one that always sat at the top of the rest was the finance application.
Right.
Now, for many, many years, the finance application online on the dealer website was super clunky, right? It was free, usually provided by the website provider, unless you paid for some type of app like what you guys have, right? But it was 52 questions long. All of them had to be required fields. It didn't submit all the time, so you lost a lot of that conversion value from the customers that did intentionally want to go to your website and take the next step into a finance. And so you guys have done something pretty unique. You guys have tied and integrated all this stuff together. And so let me back up a little bit more. Usually the process goes when you do fill out one of those older finance applications, what does the team at the dealership do? They now have to hand enter this stuff into one of several, if you're a multi-line dealer, one of several lending portals, right? And typically that would take an additional person to do it. It would either be the sales manager or the finance manager sometimes, or in my experience, we would have an hourly person sit there and just kind of, hit the clock. All right, how long is it going to take me to fill in all these customer fields into this dealer portal? And if they wanted to buy multiple units or they wanted to maybe look at an alternative unit, we had to go to a different bank because that's what that one was carried under for the franchise. So you guys have really kind of streamlined this. Can you kind of tell us, number one, how it works and why you did it this way for dealers?
Yeah, certainly. So I think the first thing you said was really important, which is you've done a lot of work to get people onto your website. And a lot of people are starting there and they want to shop your beautiful inventory that you've spent time getting figured out, or maybe even just ended up at your dealership from your OEM. That's a different story. But regardless, like you've done a lot of work to get them there. And then you've built all these other little conversions to try and get people to submit the trade. Awesome one. We love people with trades, right? That's an easy one to get in to get a quote. Says I'm really curious and I want to figure out some more pricing, right? The kind of shop by payment type tools. And then of course you have the credit application. And the credit application originally is obviously that's somebody raising their hand that's saying, like, help me purchase this. Like I'm
Right.
trying to purchase and I need financial help to do so. Awesome. I love that. Also for me as a dealership, and I think for most dealerships too, is, even if you had a cash buyer walk in the door in the old school days, it was like, could we finance this person? Because we made more money as a dealership if we financed. And, if they did have the money in cash, it's like, well, you can keep that in your investment portfolio. This is specifically old school. Like we had smart customers, they knew that their money was better in the market than it was in cash, for a car. So that was always our tool to convert. And then, from there though, when the power sports dealer side of it, like the online credit applications are really monotonous and tedious to get through. And so you take this really good hand raise of help me buy something and make it really hard for them to do. And then if they do start doing it and they don't finish the entire 52 question plus application, or if they do finish it and don't hit submit, or their computer refreshes, or something happens, wife or husband calls, kids start crying, walk away, and then they come back and you're timed out. It's like, well,
Yep.
do they start doing it again? Or do you just lose that information as a dealership? And again, just a reminder, you've already done a lot of work, paid a lot of money for all your other tools for them to get to this point to raise their hand, and that tool doesn't work as well.
Right.
So we wanted to address that. Number one, it's a simple thing for dealers to have modular credit apps. So again, ours is broken up into chunks to where it's save as you go. Our first page is mostly just lead information so that if they fall off, if they are doing this in the middle of their workday or whatever else they're doing, that you can call them a deal and say, hey, we can help you get going. Like, thanks for your interest. That initial first touch process, right? We wanted to
Yep.
solve that. Make sure they're not losing leads from all the work they're already doing. I think that answers your point from question number one.
Yeah,
So
totally. That's one thing that customers, are, I'm sorry, dealers are always looking for is more customers, right? And
right,
they usually, put a metric to that in terms of leads. How many leads am I getting? That's usually a good indicator on whether things are good or not so good, right? Is lead volume,
100%.
right? So
100%.
you being able to capture that right up front is something that a lot of these other applications don't do, right? And it's like a five liner, right? First name, phone number, email, maybe where they live, right? A zip code, something like that. And then it's like click here to the next page and you get into the actual application. That right there is a pretty good starting point to capture someone's information, even if they don't have time to fill out that full application, right?
100%. And that's actually what you'll notice is what I believe the dealership industry tried to do to solve the problem that we're solving as well. These things go hand in hand. So you could use a tool like a modular credit app, like the one we built at Revvable. But also if you notice the advancement of pre-qualification forms, they're five liners, right? They're short and they can do a soft pull. Well, that was largely, if you look at kind of the pattern there, right? You're taking less information, still getting some value as a dealer, so you can have a customer in the door. So that's kind of the way of solving that problem in one way. But then they always had these old finance forms on the other end of that too, and they still need to collect the rest of the information at some point in the process. Like you can't go fund a deal with just a five liner, with just a soft pull information, right? Like it just
Right.
doesn't work that way. I wish it did, to be honest with you, because it'd be really great to have a five liner and send it to you. I know would have closed more deals back in the day. But in general, like we've also made sure that their credit app is modular as well so that they can get that access. I think that's really big.
For a power sports dealer, there are a lot of moving parts that have a direct impact on your income. That's why Moto Hunt Premium was developed. Designed specifically for dealers, Moto Hunt Premium allows you to quickly and easily manage your inventory. With streamlined pricing data from competitive dealership listings, JD Power Pricing Guide, and National Powersport Auction wholesale prices. Moto Hunt Premium also automatically identifies potential issues with your online listings to help you move your aging inventory and maximize your gross profits. Contact us today to take a test ride of the all-new Moto Hunt Premium and see how we can help your business grow and sell more inventory.
Well, let's talk about that, right? The five liner is a much easier thing to do in the automotive versus power sports. Do you think that's just because of the collateral itself? We, for some reason, need to be asking the questions that a lot of the automotive lenders don't ask, right? Because maybe they can repo a car better than they can a motorcycle or an ATV that's stuck in someone's garage, right? It's just harder to get loans
Yeah,
submitted on power sports products in general compared to the automotive industry, is it not?
100%. Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that dealers face now. And the there's so many lenders in automotive, and the collateral is easier to get and it's easier to find. Really easy to hide a motorcycle. Really
Yep.
easy to hide an ATV. I mean, that's just stuff that can disappear really quickly. And also the amount of effort it takes to go repossess something. If you're talking about a lower end unit that's $6,000 or even less than that, the
Mhm.
motivation for somebody to go really try and repo that and then to be able to resell it is very challenging. So you're just not going to have as many lenders that have the appetite for it. And of course, as most things are, like the smaller the ticket size, the less there is for the banks to make money on, all that stuff. So, and our pool is smaller. So that's always going to be a problem in terms of dealers for that until there's equal amounts of lenders, which I don't know will ever happen, but would be nice. So that's for sure a problem.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the efficiencies, right? So to your point, we've done all this work to get the customer landed on our website. They have every intention of submitting a finance application because they want to go down that route versus, the other 20 buttons that are on a dealer site. But we're collecting the information and then boom, it's captured. It goes to the dealer. Now tell us what happens after that, right? Where do the efficiencies lie in your tools versus having someone sitting there typing it all out?
Yeah. So I'm gonna start off with a metric here that's really important. So with Revvable, when we started collecting credit app data, one of the things that became really clear was the percentage of people that don't complete credit apps.
Hmm.
And so this is a number that is really hard to find if you don't have a modular credit app because it's all or nothing. So you really start getting into like web traffic monitoring, and that can be really hard because you can't track as much as you used to be able to in general. So 36% of credit apps come in completed to Revvable. And we have a modular form. So again, their minimum requirement to get in the doors is their first and last name, their email address, and their phone number. So that's your five liner. That's all they're required to get in for you to have a lead. And only
Yep.
36% of credit apps come in completed, right?
After
So
that point.
correct, after that point.
Wow.
So that's hands-on keyboard typing. So again, if 100 people come to your website, you're only going to get 36 of those. And that's not even, or sorry, rather, let's take it back. It's 100 people actually start typing into that credit app on your website. You're only going to see 36 of those completed. So you lost 64 people that you could have reached out to and had an at bat with and provided exceptional service to say, hey, what unit were you looking at when you were trying to fill that finance out? Like, can we get you in person? Showroom appointments are big, right?
Yep.
And you just don't even have those other 64 opportunities out of those 100 people because you have no way to know they were there. You hope and pray that they went to one of your other call to actions that you have on there, but hope is a bad strategy. Everybody knows that. We can't hope on the last day of the month that we're going to hit our numbers. Like we need pipeline, we need appointments. That stuff's really important.
Yeah, you got to have it all planned out if you want to have a good
Yep.
day. It can't just be hopes and wishes, right?
Correct. So that's an important metric. So, anyways, started from there. When it comes into our system from that point, the reason why we started with the incomplete metric is because one of the things that we did in our system was the ability for people to pick up where they left off when the dealership sends you back your application. So when you do your first touch, I called Jacob back. Jacob, you made it 50% through the application, right? So, hey, Jacob, I saw you were interested in this or want to help you out with this. Instead of you starting from scratch, like you would most people would have to do, we can actually send them their credit application back so they can continue filling it out and go through like an OTP verification flow to make sure that's the right customer. And so that's really helpful, just removing friction from the customer to say you don't have to start over from scratch. You've already gotten 50% of the way through. Let's get this completed, right? That's one barrier that we're removing on that side. And then from there, the next barrier is just the fact that you have all the data in your system now. We have Google Maps integrated. So when you're getting addresses, we're trying to make sure that you get completed addresses properly. So when you go submit to the banks, you don't have as many errors. Like people suck at handwriting today, period. Like it's not beautiful. We all look like doctors' handwriting for the most part because we're all on keyboards.
Yep.
And so, there's people probably don't realize how many times they're like, I can't even read this person's handwriting. And that takes the even extra process and it's frustrating. So we take that out of the equation. Then from there, your ability to just go to all your lenders, log in and click fill. You can do 5 lenders in 5 seconds, like versus, I'd say even some of the fastest people I've seen are a 5-minute window of filling out an application. That's a lot of time if you're submitting to multiple lenders.
And you're also not having this issue where you have to print things out and walk it from one
Correct.
person to another, right? That's not even safe anyways, because it's got, personal
100%.
information that needs to be locked up and kept safe, right?
Yeah.
So it's 100% digital, is what it sounds like. And you mentioned about the handwriting stuff in the showroom. So like you've taken care of that as well, right? I remember being on the
Yeah.
floor early in my sales career, and the sales manager, throws the application at me across the room and says, you forgot something, or you need to fill this part out, or I can't read this, right? So you've gone now into the showroom experience as well, and you are now having tablets, laptops, or even better, you've got like a QR code available to the customer
Yeah.
that sits at the desk.
Yeah, 100%. So we have QR
It's
codes
cool.
generated for all of our credit apps. So, a lot of our dealers, you'll see them print them out and brand them and put them, around the dealership on the tabletops, et cetera.
Yeah.
The more that we can get people filling out information from their devices is also really helpful for dealers. Like whenever you have somebody, you'll see it all the time in dealers where they'll get walked to like a terminal on their computer and start typing in their personal information. Well, that's like red flag number one if people are like security conscious, right? Like you shouldn't really type your information into a public computer anyways. Especially with like Google Manager and all that stuff. It's not even that it's you that's worried about the dealership stealing your information. It's just the fact that it can accidentally get saved on someone else's device. So
Yeah.
we are trying to give dealerships a little bit more control and to the customers of scan the QR code. Also, majority of customers have a bunch of information saved on their phone. Like
Yeah.
we don't want to delay. Time kills all deals, right? It is in all industries, that is one of, you're always working against the clock. And so if someone has all their information saved on their phone, I scan a QR code and I'm done with the application in 5 minutes. Well, that's the fastest way for me to get that into the bank's hands, which I can't control how long it takes the bank to make a decision if they're going to fund this, but I do have control over how long it takes a customer's information to get to that bank. And like that's what I want. Like I want to get that deal done. Like we don't want the old school automotive long-winded process takes forever. I don't want to sit them down and watch them struggle to fill out a finance application, to keep looking at their phone, looking at the piece of paper, trying to find the information on their phone. Like if you've ever seen that process, which most everybody has, it's miserable. And if you've done it before, it's really like you know it could be solved. You just suffer through it because it's the necessary of evils, but there's no need to do that.
Yeah, it's the crucial step into the next, the thing you got to
Yeah,
do to keep this, buying journey going. Okay.
100%. And that's like
So
one of the things.
interesting.
Yeah, and with the QR codes too is I'm sure most everybody's run into the situation where the customer just doesn't want to come inside, doesn't want to sit down or anything like that. They're looking at this beautiful side by side. They can afford it, but they tell you, oh yeah, I'm just looking around. It's like you can scan a QR code outside, have them start filling the process, and then they're kind of already engaged in the without having to go into the scary sales unit where they think they're going to get sold on something. It's like they've already been sold on it. We can kind of take some steps outside. So there's a little bit of like creativity there as well. That used to happen all the time. Like, oh, I'm just kicking tires today. It's like Audi did this research back in the day. So, this is old research, but most of the people that were showing up at dealerships had made a decision they were going to buy a car that day.
Yeah.
And so, like, how many of that is happening in the power sports? I don't have that exact number. I'd love to know, but I'm pretty sure that, with when you're looking at people on how many are starting on your website and then showing up to your dealership, a lot of those people want to buy something that day if they could, right? And so
Yep.
you can kind of get that process started, help them getting finance easier without taking away from the shiny object is big too.
That is a good point. You got to keep them comfortable where they're at, right? And if you can't get them indoors, okay, man, here, scan this barcode. Let's do it right here, right? Or QR code. So, some other metrics that we were looking at, you said that you processed in the last 6 months 219,000 roughly, finance applications. That's about 954 credit apps per day nationally, right?
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about that, right? These are all dealerships all over the country, all brands, all shapes and sizes. Does anything really stand out in that 954? I mean, that seems like, let's just call it 1,000 apps a day that are being submitted through your tools, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I think that's the one nice part about it is when you look at that number and then you look at dealerships who aren't using a tool that can capture every single credit app that gets started. Again, that number is really important of how many you're losing when you see how big the number is on daily submissions. So like don't limit yourself on that. It's like a big one. And again, it doesn't matter what tool you're using, just use a tool and don't get stuck like with customers on your website that can't submit things. The other one thing that's interesting on that as well is we do see, I'd say it's roughly 50% of those credit apps are getting like a credit pull on them per day.
Okay.
So, they're not doing credit pulls on every application, but that's kind of interesting on our side too, is just to see how many people are trying to investigate credit profiles before going to lenders, and items like that, because that's always, kind of an interesting topic of, what is the credit score of a customer and maybe where does that determine what you do with the customer, what's your priority of working these deals. Dealers are kind of prioritization is being seen by the data of like cherry picking deals essentially because they're typically staff limited. So, one of the things we hear all the time is we run out of time to work deals, and then they're also not using a tool to help them speed up certain processes that exist today. So it's kind of funny, you see it in the data too of like how much time they have. They're trying to figure out ways to work deals that are higher qualified, but then they're also missing tools on the back end that can like help them reduce wasted time that doesn't need to be done today as well. So I think that's a
It's
pretty interesting stat.
it's true. It's true. The high volume dealers are for sure missing out on a lot of these deals just simply because they can't get them processed in time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And the bigger
super,
deal,
super cool.
they can afford to pay the extra staff, right? Not every dealership can afford to pay extra staff to do the daily tasks. Like there's some dealers who can afford extra bodies and some dealers who can't. And then also extra bodies are hard to find right now. Hiring is I would say kind of miserable if you're in the process right now. So it's
Well,
interesting.
a dealer's biggest expense will always be the two-legged one. So if you can help, not remove someone completely from your staff, but the job that they're relegated to do of just typing information into a computer, software like yours can certainly help them, stay efficient, stay compliant, and stay
Yep.
quick, right, with these customers. And I like your point about, back in the day, these dealers used to, sweat them out in the box, as they say, right? Or sweat them out
Yep.
in the customer lounge. And it takes an hour or two just to get a yay or nay on an approval, right? Half that time goes into just submitting it. And you've shortened that up into minutes, right? So
100%.
super cool. Okay. So, this is what I see as just an evolution of our industry, right? As more technology gets woven into the sales process and it helps to facilitate these customers buying one of our products faster, better, right? What other types of things are you thinking or are you working on to kind of help speed up this whole process, right? Finance is still going to be a very big thing in our industry, but submitting just the application is one little part of it. Where do you see this whole thing going?
Yeah, for Revvable, I mean, we would love to help dealerships do a lot of things better in the front end of the process, from getting the lead from your website to interacting with your CRM to interacting with the customer. There's a lot of room there for people to do better. And there's room for, one thing I think that scares dealerships and maybe when I say this, it might scare them a little bit too, but there is a lot of room for AI in the space, not to diminish the fact that your salespeople are going to be the best to interact with a customer. It's really trying to make sure that the tools that your salespeople have allow them and clear up it's called clearing the brush, right? We use this term in technology, but we're trying to clear stuff that doesn't allow them to have a good customer experience, right? Like I want my salespeople to have as much time to be able to provide excellent experience to the customer that's sitting in front of them, the next customer that's coming in. And if they're doing all this other work without technology or this, things that are manual, it just takes away from that experience. So that's where I see like the layer of things that we can like, what can we remove that doesn't necessarily need to be touched by a salesperson? Because again, I don't think that salespeople will ever be replaced. I just think that they're going to have better tools, and so really good salespeople are going to be even better just based off of like their interactions with customers. So we're touching most of the front end process as much as we can get our hands on to help people is what we're going to do.
Yeah. And you guys work with all the major banks, right? Synchrony, Sheffield. What's your list of banks there?
Yeah, so largely almost every OEM bank is on the platform. Work with a couple other ones like Iron Horse. We can fill out model. When I say work with, I want to be specific here. We fill out their application from our Google Chrome extension. We have some direct integrations coming with a few banks. That's going to be really exciting. If people can follow along for the announcements when those happen. But yeah, today it's pretty much every lender that they need, and there's also other good tools. So for example, like there's Dealer out there that can fill out some really important things that most of our customers use as well. You've got the route ones and app ones. There are other tools that do some aggregation that we interact with a little bit as well from our side. But yeah, pretty much anything that they need, we can do. And we see it in the numbers. Dealerships on average are going up and up in the lender count for how many they submit to, primarily due to like the market and the credit score. And then also from a dealership perspective, like you're trying to get your customer the best rate and you're also trying to get yourself the most reserve and everything to make sure this deal works out in everybody's favor. So, but we can handle almost all those banks, which is great.
Okay. And do you see one bank being preferred over another? I mean, what has Revvable got to say about how some of the banks are funding some of these deals or just the simple applications that are being shot over to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in general, the most thing that we're seeing like commonalities, because we're all across the U.S., there's just differences in different markets, but you're pretty much always seeing three lenders really popular, right? And not just these three specifically, but just three lenders are being used, which is an OEM. We're typically seeing like an Octane or a Sheffield or a Synchrony get submitted to, and then you're usually seeing some sort of credit union. So the pattern is that those kind of three, it's like if they're buying a new unit, it's the OEM that's responsible for that unit if they have financial services. And then you're seeing like the Sheffield, Synchrony, and the Octanes. I mean, those are names where every time we talk to a dealer, what lenders are you using? It's those lenders, right? And
Yeah.
then from there, on the other end of that, you're hearing like, of course, they use Cuddles, they use some other smaller credit unions that are local. So it's really kind of that interesting pattern of the big three. And then we're now starting to see obviously those numbers start to climb. People are trying to find subprime lenders. So you hear Model Financial and Iron Horse Financial are some other big names that we kind of hear a lot, which is interesting, depending
Yeah,
on where you.
yeah. And new lenders pop up, every year, right? And they're always looking to put a little bit of money into the market, as they say, and maybe they're going after that subprime lender. I know dealers are always looking for that stuff.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool, man. Sounds like you got a really neat tool. And this came, to my attention over the last, several months, right? And Revvable has always been one of these companies. It's like, it's getting some good traction, right? But it wasn't until I heard a couple of my close friends, they're like, man, Revvable is saving us time, it's saving us money. It's just, I don't, they're talking about they don't imagine life before they were able to use your tools. So you're doing some cool stuff over there. And I just wanted to get a little interview with you before you kind of sell out to the rest of the crowd there. You get a
No
big
worries.
big funding round, right? And you're too big for us. But anything else to add about the things that you're doing or anything on the horizon?
Yeah, I'd say, well, first and foremost, I hope we're never too big for power sports dealers. My goal is to buy our customers, enjoying our products is the ability to go get money from VCs so that we can build more products that are helpful for dealers. There's always been I feel like a chicken and egg problem in the power sports, which is, they're so used to automotive software that gets rebranded or just tinkered with a little bit and then, stuck down their throat for too expensive. And, we started in power sports to build software for the specifics of the vertical. And so hopefully we continue to do that forever. I mean, that would be amazing if that was Revvable's future. And I think we can do it with the support we've had from the dealers. So hopefully we'll never get too big, on our side there and in general. So if we can help any dealer out, that's awesome, from our standpoint. But
It's good, man.
yeah,
It's good.
yeah. And
You're
then
a genuine dude.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, again, we like to see all the tools in the space that are coming for dealers. And again, if we can do anything, even if we can just educate dealers on protecting, expensive people's time, I think is where I see value. Again, even if you don't use a tool that says our name on it specifically, if people walk away and they just go, okay, I'm right now, it's more common that they're paying an expensive person to do admin work than the opposite of that. They hired this beautiful F&I person who can, do really great work on that process, and then they're stuck with doing this super manual thing that doesn't actually enhance anyone's experience. And so if anything, we can hopefully, get GMs and owners to be thinking about protecting their people's times. And again, doesn't matter if you're using our tool or not. There's 1,000 ways you can do that. You can do it in the service department. In certain ways, you can do it, with your websites, all sorts of things. So I think that's
Yep.
hopefully something we can educate people on.
And all these tools in my eyes has always been about leveraging the ability of a certain individual, right? Most, like you said, most of these people got started in this business from being an enthusiast, mom
Yep.
and pop style, right? And they kind of do it because they love it, but they weren't formally introduced or trained to some of these other things that kind of make the business run. F&I being one of them. Inventory management, marketing, training, HR, all these things, right? So having a few key vendors such as yourself is good to include in your process because they kind of help take that experience learning curve out of it. It's just like boom, it's easy, right?
Yeah, one of our customers actually told us this line, and they probably have no idea how important it is of a marketing line. In we haven't used it, but one thing that they brought up in general was like it really helped their rookie F&I person act more like a veteran. And the whole point of that is just like it is a process adjustment. It's hard to hire people. When you do hire good people, you want to be able to give them the chance to do it, but you don't want to lose any business. And ramping people is a great way to lose business, even if it's not intentional or even if it's not a bad experience, it just takes them longer to do certain things. So they were like, honestly, like when somebody's out or when, so and so is on vacation, it's nice that they can actually go on vacation and they don't get 1,000 text messages about where's this, where's that, and how do we move this, how do we get to this lender, or, who do I submit to for this? Like we've been able to do some helpful things there, which obviously, like as a byproduct, I think it's interesting. But if we can help somebody relax on vacation from the power sports dealership, which most people probably don't know what vacation means in the automotive or power sports industry to a degree, is really nice. And just things like that, I think, are what I'd call small wins, but they really are big wins for most people.
I think a lot of these guys will take all the small wins that they can get, man.
Yes, I hope so.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up on that note. Again, his name is Jory Anderson. He's a CEO of Revvable. They got some really cool stuff going on over there, explicitly on the online and in showroom finance process, for the application side of things to get your customers in the system and submitted. He's a well-rounded dude, been in the industry for a long time, and I can't wait to see what you got up your sleeve next there, Jory. Any
Sounds
preview on
great.
any of that?
Yeah, I gave a preview. I mean, one of the things, maybe probably the most interesting thing I think we're working on is, from being in tech so long and running sales teams, the CRM is hated by most everybody. Like it's even today on some of these fancy like tech ones, the Salesforces and some of the stuff that has HubSpot in it. For salespeople, it's really always been a tool that it's nice, but doesn't make our lives always that much better. And so we've got some interesting things coming that again are power sport specific. We're taking a long time to build these things out because we're getting feedback from dealer. But our idea is just as a GM and a sales manager, there's a lot of stuff that you want out of your CRM and data that you want on like the tip of your fingers to help a month end close. And then your salesperson is going to want to know how to access that as well so they can make their commission check the best or make all that stuff. And so we're specifically designing a few things of the software that help that process to where it's actually valuable for a sales rep to enter their data because we're going to be able to give the salesperson, not just the managers, but we're going to give the salespeople specific insights into their deals, into their patterns of how they can maximize their customers' experience, which is great. So
Okay.
those little insights. I know that's big, but there's some cool stuff that's coming there that I don't want to give too much away, until we have it in the market and have some more dealers beta testing it.
Well, I can't wait to try it out. Kind of sounds like a little bit of CRM. And anybody that knows me, I live and die by the CRM. So excited to
Yep.
kind of check that out and see what it's capable of for sure.
100%. And I'll say this, most people in the power sports, I don't think live and die by the CRM as much as I would want them to. So I think there's a couple things that can change that, but hopefully
Good.
CRM isn't just a quoting tool in your arsenal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's about organization, right? It's not just the acronym CRM or how it's used. It's where everything needs to be so that you can access all the things that you just said, right? What's at my
Yeah.
fingertips for how I can make an adjustment or make a decision into how the day's going to end or the month's going to end or this or that. And it's just one of those things that is kind of centralized to the overall sales process online or in store or elsewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like you've already talked about a ton, but even with tools, from that you've run into, it's that sweet spot of interaction with your online tools is really going to happen in some place to keep them organized is really important. And it's, again, it goes back to both things, right? Like you've done a lot of work to get the customer there. Like don't lose your customers' data or like the ability to contact them or the ability to help them find a bike of their dreams by being poorly organized with your systems in-house. Like that loses way more deals than people think, which is, it's okay when they're learning and they're getting better at it. And they've truly not had a ton of technology firms that have built for them. So it's coming. It's working. And
Totally.
there's been a lot of great movement from other companies too on that stuff too. Like existing CRMs have done a good job of starting to turn that ship around, I think, which is great.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we'll kind of end this here. Where can people find you? And I know you post a little bit on LinkedIn, right? How can people get a
Yeah.
hold of you?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn, just Jory Anderson on there. If you follow my LinkedIn, I mostly talk about sales process and stuff because I would classify that's probably my bread and butter in terms of what I like, and I love to see those processes. And then you can follow us on Revvable's LinkedIn page. If you're anywhere around there, give us a like and see for content on that side. So we'll be doing some more LinkedIn posting, and hopefully getting some interviews with some dealers on their processes as well. So that way, we'd like to be agnostic to, interview dealers who are really efficient, even if they're not using our tool. So hopefully we can show you guys some of that stuff too coming out in the future on the Revvable LinkedIn page.
Spread the wisdom, right?
That's right.
There it is,
Powered
man.
by-
Well, all right. Well, Jory, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll go ahead and leave it at that. So,
Thanks, Jacob.
hi, everybody.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you're a motorcycle and power sports dealer, you already know the biggest marketplace websites are clunky, slow, and riddled with ads. Even if you pay big bucks to list your inventory, your competitors can pay even more to outrank you. That's why we created MotoHunt. Our site is famously streamlined and quick, with no extra nonsense to confuse buyers or dealers. That's why we rank so high in search results without having to spend millions in advertising. Why pay 3 times as much? At MotoHunt, one low price covers everything a dealer needs to get their inventory listed and collecting leads fast, with no multi-level pricing tiers and no way for your competition to out-premium you. No matter how many listings or leads you generate, your subscription price is the same. Click the link to find out how MotoHunt can help you start generating more leads today.